Strange Obsession, written by Shobhaa, narrated by Benaifer J. Mirza. Chapter 1. Mrs. Aggarwal, you are spoiling your daughter. What nonsense this is! How can you allow such a young girl to go to Bombay all by herself? Amrita's mother smiled indulgently. She told her neighbor politely, but firmly, that Amrita was no longer a child. She was 20 years old and a very responsible young lady. Besides, what future did she have in Delhi anyway? The neighbor wasn't convinced. The two women sat knitting companionably on the small patch of lawn behind the Aggarwal's Vasant Vihar bungalow. There was a mild sun rising high into the winter sky as the aroma of parathas soaked in ghee wafted out to where they were seated. It's not as if there are no models in Delhi, Mrs. Sethia continued. Amrita overheard the remark and snapped. Yes, there are. Third-rate models posing for Ludhiana woolen mills. That's not my style. Her mother stared with pride at her beautiful daughter and gently silenced the neighbor by placing a finger on her lips. Amrita's suitcase on the veranda was already crammed to the brim with clothes. Her mother wondered what else she was going to stuff into that bag. Amrita was crazy about clothes and could not have enough of them. But then, thought Mrs. Aggarwal, wasn't it natural for an attractive, ambitious, glamorous model to want the best? Besides, Amrita had always been touched by good luck. From the day she was born, everybody said she was blessed, even the Pandit who drew up her kundli. When she was born, Amrita's two older brothers had stared at their brand new baby sister with awe and told their mother, "She's so pretty, so perfect. She's going to be the most beautiful woman in the world someday." They'd been joined in their admiration by Amrita's father, who had agreed wholeheartedly with them. He had gazed at his little daughter lying contentedly in her mother's arms and told his wife, "This child is special." Mr. Aggarwal, who had begun his career as a babu in a lowly government office, had quit his job and started a small business on borrowed capital. By the time Amrita was 5 years old, the family had prospered sufficiently for her father to move them all out of a crowded basti in Old Delhi to their present home, a neat, well-maintained bungalow in Vasant Vihar. Now he was the hard-working owner of a processed foods factory in Gurgaon, with over 200 people working for him. Amrita had breezed through school. With two doting brothers to escort her and a beaming father to cater to her every whim, Amrita was certainly someone who aroused envy in her classmates. But, as her mother often reminded her, the envy had more to do with the way she looked stunning, at a time when other teenagers were uniformly gawky and awkward. Even though Amrita was no more than an average student, there was something exceptionally bright and compelling about her. Perhaps it was the golden glints dancing in her tawny eyes, or the radiance and freshness she exuded each time she turned her head to face someone. Or perhaps it was the litheness of her magnificently structured body, with its long, toast brown legs, narrow waist and press that stood out, proud, high and firm. If there was one slight imperfection, it was a suggestion of a squint in those wide-spaced feline eyes fringed with unnaturally dark lashes. It was also in the tip-tilted nose that gave her oval face an elfin charm, but was a problem to photograph. What attracted most people was the deep cleft in her chin. Without it, her face might have been too pretty, too symmetrical, too boring. However, it was when Amrita laughed, throwing back her head and allowing her rich mane of hair to flow around her face like the sea, that she was irresistible. The laugh, open and throaty, would gurgle its way up and emerge in a cascade of uninhibitedly happy sound that would fill the room with infectious joy. Amrita knew the effect it had on people, and that always made her laugh some more. "Time to go," said her brother Amrish as he tossed the car keys at Ashish, the younger one. Mrs. Aggarwal couldn't stop hugging Amrita and crying as the sound of the Maruti 1000 reversing out of the garage reached them. Amrita was dressed in her favorite attire, well-worn Guess jeans and a black Gap t-shirt. Her father looked disapprovingly at her and said, "Isn't this a bit too... Amrita completed his sentence for him by saying brightly, "Casual, shabby?" before rushing into his arms and clinging to him. "We trust you, Beti," her father said. "Bombay is different from Delhi. You already know that. Take care of yourself. Don't go out alone at night. Keep in constant touch. Eat well and sleep well. And remember, if you're ever in any kind of trouble, no matter how small, call home." Amrita was too overcome to respond. She buried her face into her father's shoulder and was suddenly beset by all sorts of fears. It would have been so easy to say, "I've changed my mind. I want to stay." But she didn't. It had to be Bombay. She wanted the big time, and she wanted it bad. Chapter number 2. Meenakshi was buying a pack of imported cigarettes from the panwala in Colaba when she spotted her for the first time. Amrita was getting out of a taxi and rushing into a building across the street. She was carrying heaps of clothes on hangers in one hand and an ungainly makeup bag in the other. Meenakshi watched the flustered girl as she made a last-minute dash from the road divider. A sharp screech of tires, and she saw Amrita sprawled across the street, her clothes all over the wet, slimy road, as a taxi driver abused her lustily, and the crowds gathered, as if out of nowhere, to watch the impromptu street show. Meenakshi put the fiver back into her jeans pocket, slipped the pack of Cartiers into her unconstructed linen jacket, and strolled over to see what was going to happen next. Anything could. Bombay was like that. She found Amrita in tears, attempting to pick up her scattered belongings while the people in the crowd heckled, "Wo shampoo wali ladki!" And the taxiwala continued to curse, encouraged by the large audience. The traffic had come to a standstill, and there were even people looking out from the windows of the adjoining buildings. Meenakshi's heart melted. She strode up to Amrita briskly and held out her hand. "Here, let me help you up." Amrita grabbed the proffered hand gratefully and began babbling something incoherent about being late for her assignment. "Relax," Meenakshi said as she took charge. She walked determinedly up to the cabbie and fixed him with a steady stare. "I am Inspector General V.S. Iyengar's daughter. You want to act funny with this girl?" The cabbie looked at her, uncertain whether to believe her or not. Suddenly, a traffic policeman strolled up, late as usual, and noticing Meenakshi, saluted smartly before asking, "Any problem, madam?" That was the cue for the crowds to disperse. Meenakshi shook her head and waved him off. Amrita's face was streaked with smudged eye makeup, and her carefully blow-dried hair hung in rat tails down her back. Meenakshi burst out laughing. "You aren't going to get too many modeling assignments if you go around looking like that," she said, taking her by the elbow and escorting her to the entrance of the building, which housed a well-known ad agency on the 4th floor. Amrita, still flustered, stared gratefully at her. "You've been so sweet. I don't know how to thank you," she said. "I'm still new to Bombay."
Sample complete. Ready to continue?